And we're back.
With the Jess and John podcast. I'm Jess.
And I am John.
We have a very special episode. It is the official memorial service for the beloved app and website TikTok.
Oh,
Now,
sweet, sweet TikTok. How you will be missed.
it's the most popular online destination in the world, and the Supreme Court has upheld Congress's decision to ban our beloved app.
It's not cool. We don't like it. And as much as I'm going to miss the hilarious videos that of no particular consequence, I think this is a massive violation of free speech. But we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah, but more importantly, John, think of the influencers.
I
Chuck
am.
Schumer gave a speech on the floor of the Senate saying the influencers have built their livelihood. It was like basically we thought TikTok would be sold to an American by now, and it's almost like we didn't ever mean to ban TikTok. We just really thought an American would buy it. And he made it about the influencers instead of about free speech and free press.
Chuck in, Chuck influencer. Chuck Schumer, possibly the biggest influencer of all. Yeah, I when I saw there's so many things to talk about here, but the Democratic response is really one of them. Like you see Democrats now doing a political strategy. And I think why it crawls under my skin so much is that we really only have in this two-party system Democrats as like the hope for an opposition, a resistance, organized political resistance to Trump and the MAGA movement. And they're just holding on to what seems to me as completely transparent um, strategy, right? Like Chuck Schumer's going down to the Senate floor and he's saying, oh, well, we tried our very best to save TikTok. We had a bill introduced just on Monday, but the Republicans killed it. So when it goes away, you know who to blame. And meanwhile, there's like, clips going back 10 months of, Democrats and Republicans, as we both saw, pool together saying, we have got to ban this app. Um, so, you also see this with the president, President Biden right now, kicking the blame to President Trump and saying that the administration is not going to force this law for the first couple hours that it goes into effect so that they can try to stick Trump with the blame. And to me, we need so much more out of an opposition party than just shifting around blame in the most transparent ways possible. I don't know, Jessica, what did you think of all this?
It's ridiculous that the Democrats were pushing for this, that Biden signed the ban, and then now is saying, "Oh, we've got to find a way to save TikTok," when Trump, of course, was supportive of the ban as president, but then campaigned on save TikTok. And so now Trump is being handed this huge win from the Democrats. You have his national security pick, Mike Waltz, going on Fox News saying, we're going to find a way to delay this so that Trump can do his thing here. This is a huge win for Trump. Not only the ceasefire deal being something he's taking credit for, saying that this negotiation process wouldn't have gone in his direction if it weren't for Trump's threat that all hell will break out in the Middle East if there is not a release of the hostages and a deal done by the time he gets into office. You have now the TikTok ban as well. And what's going to happen with Ukraine? It's just going to be win after win after win as soon as Trump gets in office. And the Democrats just cooked it up, put it in the oven, and just let Trump get in office to take the cake out. That's really what's going on here.
Yeah, once again, and how many moments have we been through with the Democrats? Charlie Brown in the football. Here we are again, failing, having the biggest idiot on earth have more of an understanding of just raw power and how to use it and how to think about it in terms like of how ordinary people consume these things. And just like you said, he's teed up for wins on all kinds of fronts. Use of executive power on Gaza, stepping in at the last moment to save TikTok. And I wouldn't be surprised, glancing into the crystal ball often makes you look like an idiot yourself. But, we see Donald Trump kind of letting the traditional aspects of the Republican Party come out and say, oh, we got to belt tighten. We got to make sure we're not spending too much money on Social Security and Medicare. And there again, he's probably setting himself up to step in as the savior at the end of the day to save these popular programs. So Once again, Donald Trump, you have outsmarted the opposition, and I don't know how this keeps happening, but we really don't deserve it.
And this is something, the TikTok ban specifically, that's personal for me and John. Not that my income is like tied to TikTok now. I'm a valued CCP asset, but for a long time, like TikTok hasn't been my main thing, but there was once upon a time where political content was, welcomed in the algorithm and treated like anything else. Now, TikTok has made a turn for about a year now towards more pushing the TikTok shop, more consumerism, more lifestyle content. But both of our careers started on TikTok, right? Would you say that's true? Do you credit TikTok for your career now, John?
Oh, I do. I mean, Jessica, I think we might actually be the Chinese spies that the government is talking about. I mean,
Unknowingly, we've
yeah.
been manipulated by the CCP to do their bidding in America.
Oh, please, yeah. Just wherever Mao is right now. Shout out, King. Uh, the for the purposes of the security state, this is a joke. But yeah, I would credit everything that I'm doing right now really started on TikTok. I mean, I was working on campaigns and politically involved before this, but I decided to move back to the Ohio Valley where I'm from, to start making media and just putting out the truth as I saw it on political issues in the simplest, easiest to consume format possible. I got a job at as a bartender, and I started making TikToks talking about politics. And one of those took me up to the East Palestine train derailment that happened in the county where I grew up, and it was just me with my camera, with my phone up there, making TikToks about this, industrial disaster and the implications for the people that I grew up with. And a larger outlet noticed that and snapped me up. That was More Perfect Union, and now that's become the definition of my career. And that I was lucky enough to have that end up in an Emmy nomination for that exact piece. I had last year I spoke at the DNC. All of these things really started for me through the access that TikTok's algorithm provided to me, to you, to thousands of other people who were gate kept by legacy media and took their unique perspectives to the internet, used their free speech, and found an audience. And I think that shaped our country and our political discourse in a lot of ways. Some, I'm sure, uh, that the government found objectionable, and now here we are. Can't have people connecting too much, can we?
Yeah, I think, TikTok, of course, has their headquarters in Los Angeles, America, United States, California. And I think that this idea that it's some Chinese company and that's their main concern with it is not true. I think their concern with TikTok has everything to do with freedom of speech and freedom of the press. And the type of news that people were getting on TikTok was not filtered through the typical consideration corporate media makes, which is this friendly information for advertisers? And my first TikToks were about how the Federal Reserve actually runs, going over CIA documents. And one of my videos on the CIA ended up getting flagged as like, you know, misinformation. And I literally had the CIA documents from the National Security Archives like green screen behind me. There was nothing that was not factual in that video. And so you were covering a story or helping Ryan Grimm find influencers who are impacted by this kind of censorship, which was kind of new to TikTok. We thought it was a place where we could talk about this stuff, and then suddenly it wasn't. And so Ryan had me and a couple other folks on Rising, and from there, I sort of got picked up for TYT, to do political commentary there, and then I ended up being a host on the Hill, sitting in the chair Ryan was sitting in when he interviewed me, and now I work with Ryan at Dropsite News. And none of that would have happened if it weren't for TikTok, for a brief moment, having an algorithm that let these ideas have a day in the sun, be put out on social media platforms that were accessible in America. So this whole banning of TikTok feels super dystopian. Just the fact that in a country that prides itself as being a bastion of freedom, wants to have so much control over the information we get and access. And so a lot of people on this new app, RedNote, have been giving some commentary about what all of this means. We'll get into RedNote in a second, but someone said it's shocking to me that Americans seemingly have this freedom of opinion, but not freedom of choice. But we're starting to lose our freedom of opinion as well with this lack of access to any information.
Yeah, and I mean, think of all the things that this really cuts off because you just, heard from both of us. Those are our stories that were made possible by this algorithm that let us connect with audiences. And I already feel myself going into oh, woe is me, the influencer. But really, this is just First Amendment stuff, and what we're going to lose going forward from this is the path that both you and I walked, and not just us, but thousands of other people representing, communities and perspectives that were previously just silenced before this chance to, really find an audience and enhance the dialogue. And, that's the whole point of the First Amendment, right? We have a republic. If we can keep it, we have to be able to talk about issues through channels that aren't controlled by legacy media or have a huge high barrier to entry or are funded, by various interests that exercise control over what's being said. If you've consumed media on TikTok or if you've made media on TikTok, you know that anybody with a phone can start to tell the truth. I think about the effect that this will have on, live unfolding events like the Black Lives Matter protests or any number of horrors that's going to come to us in the Trump administration. We're losing a really important forum to talk about all of this and respond to it.
And we kind of did with X as well, with Elon Musk buying it. X was like really useful for organizing during the Black Lives Matter movement. I remember like I found the protests location that I would go to in Florida by scrolling X and looking in the area I was in by, St. Pete, Tampa area. And I don't think Elon has an algorithm that's going to let that happen at all in the future.
And isn't that convenient? Billionaire ownership captures the public square, social media that people like you were using to find protest information. And now I'm sure if you were in that situation today under Elon's algorithm, you would go on there and you would scroll and you would see Marjorie Taylor Greene shooting lasers probably instead of protest locations. You
Marjorie
know,
Taylor Greene has control of the lasers in the sky now.
do you hear that? I heard it on Twitter. I refuse to go.
That's why stopped tweeting about them. She's got the buttons now.
See? That's how it
Um,
works.
I think what's scary about the TikTok ban, I wrote about this for Dropsite in a piece that came out this morning, is it's almost like the TikTok portion of this piece of legislation is a red herring. So the way the bill is written, it's HR 7521. It's officially called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act.
They really missed
So
the chance to slip inflation in there.
I know it's a wordy ass name. Everyone's been calling it just the TikTok ban bill, but it's much bigger than just that. It specifically names TikTok as this foreign adversary controlled app because its parent company ByteDance is based in China, even though, as we said, TikTok's headquarters are in Culver City in LA, California. But they go further than TikTok. They say any app or covered company, rather, that is controlled by a foreign adversary and is determined by the president to be a threat to national security can be banned within 30 days. It's a simple two-step process. The president has to write a notice that is public to Congress. It's partially public because there's one part where they say, yes, this app is owned by a foreign adversary. And two, I think it's a threat to national security for X, Y, and Z. And then there's a classified portion where they talk about what assets would need to be divested from this foreign adversary. So basically sold to someone in America, probably a big tech company, because this applies to social media platforms with 1 million active users or more. So these companies are expensive. Like, who can afford to buy them up besides big tech companies? In any case, the president just has to send this letter 30 days later, makes a public notice that, hey, I think this app is a threat to national security. Poof, it's gone. It can't be downloaded or maintained in the United States. So this bill just gives the authority to the president to decide what people we can communicate with all around the world. What apps live or die? What apps are permitted in the United States? Now it's all up to whoever's the commander in chief.
It's really crazy. And if anybody listening hasn't read Jessica's piece, you can find it on Drop Site News, right, Jessica?
It's on Dropsite News, yeah. And
Um,
I haven't seen it covered in a lot of other places, which is crazy because it's just the plain language of the bill.
yeah, and I was reading through it. Everybody should go and find it. Could you tell us a little bit about the um, kind of business model of these American social media companies? You talked about catch and kill in your article. So, like, how's that part of this?
Yes, and I linked Ryan's first and only TikTok. Very proud of Ryan
Oh,
Grimm
that
for
I love
making a
it.
TikTok account days before it expires.
We
But
love your millennial pause, Ryan.
he's been covering like big tech in the US for so long. And they make enough money and ad revenue off of these social media platforms they own. And while we might want something with different features that allows us, to share information in a way that's not allowed on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok made an app that has a functionality a lot of people like. It was a better platform. And so all of these big tech companies were really scared of TikTok. I talk about this in a piece a little bit, but Facebook, their parent company Meta, went so far as to hire this firm called Targeted Victory to run a bunch of op-eds that were like, TikTok's really bad, actually. It's bad for kids. It's doing X, Y, and Z. Basically, accusing TikTok of things that Meta used to be accused of in terms of data harvesting. And so they basically just hired this firm to push some stories that were not favorable to TikTok. And that comes from leaked internal emails that were sent to the Washington Post that the Washington Post got a hold of in March 2022. So, big reason TikTok was banned was kind of this strategy of big tech companies to catch new social media platforms and kill them. And if they can't afford to buy them and then put them out of business, which is their usual model, it seems that their new model is to just get them banned. And the domestic market for these apps has made it so that anything new, they'll sort of get wind of it, catch and kill. But now the way the bill is structured, which is in part thanks to some lobbying from big tech companies like Meta, now they can just have the president just sign a little letter to Congress and poof, they're gone. So it is similar to catch and kill, but it's a new approach.
It's really wild. So I think this strategy, Facebook bought Instagram first, right?
Yeah.
And
Google bought YouTube,
right, okay,
WhatsApp, now Meta
WhatsApp,
as
all of
well.
these. And so, another interesting part of this story, maybe we could talk about this a little bit, is just that I think, in America, it's like there's going to be a price on everything, right? So both sides, Republicans, Democrats, they come up with this bill to ban TikTok and they say, but it can go on, you just have to sell it to us. And I think what it looks like to me is all of our, you know, business people, politicians, they assume, yeah, we'll just find the right price and then they'll be happy to part with it. But the, Chinese ownership of TikTok is like, actually, money don't buy you love in this scenario. We're not going to sell you our algorithm and you guys are just going to go without it and you're going to kind of lay in the bed um, that you made. And I think that's kind of what's happening. And now there's this big rush, this big scramble. Trump wants to save it, and the Democrats are kind of trying to drop the hot potato.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone that's a user on TikTok has been looking for an alternative, and people don't really want to use Instagram Reels. I
This
think
was, yes, go ahead.
people are mad at the government, and I think that's a part of why Instagram Reels is not the solution because they see Mark Zuckerberg cozying up to the Trump people saying, oh, there needs to be more masculinity in corporate America and you can be fascist on Facebook now. Really, what it's all about. people think it's about the Democrats and the Republicans. It's about appealing to corporate rule in the United States. And Mark Zuckerberg wants Facebook to be flooded with everyone, one. And I won't just say Facebook, it's really any meta platform. They want it to be flooded with the same amount of time we were giving in terms of screen time to TikTok. They want those people to be on Facebook now. They want the advertisers to come to Facebook now. And I think that's what it's really about. It's about money more than any political ideology. I don't think these guys really give a genuine fuck about what our political beliefs are beyond are they voting in a way that allows for them to make as much money as possible.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And, it's like the missing in this debate, it's like, hey, the American government's like, we don't want foreign governments to be in control of the app where millions of Americans go and just kind of volunteer up their data and have really open conversations. We want our billionaires to do that so that they can use all of your data and peer into your private conversations, and it's much safer that way. But missing in all of this is kind of this question of like who owns the public square, and I recognize that we are very far from a place where we could nationalize any one of these platforms where it could be publicly owned and publicly controlled. I mean, that would require us to have a government that is publicly owned and publicly controlled, which as a Princeton
That's
study
so
10
good.
years ago will point out, didn't have that 10 years ago. We certainly don't have it now. But I think we need it, and that needs to be part of the conversation because this is these platforms are the third places that kind of died off in our communities. There are digital places where we go that's like not home or work, where we go to discuss really important things. And why should they be under control of foreign governments or our own government and billionaires that kind of use our legal system to advance their business models? As we just head further and further into like, digital revolution, information age, I think that's what we all got to be talking about. How do we control the places where we hang out and where we talk about stuff?
There was one TikTok that went viral and was posted across platforms of an influencer saying fascist states ban websites and apps. And while that might sound like an extreme take, and because of our elementary school education about what America's all about, freedom, right? We can never be fascists. That's other people, not us. But fascism, as it's a quote attributed to Benito Mussolini, but basically it is the merging together of the corporation and the state. And what I was posting about on TikTok was the kind of education that reveals that America has always operated under the guise of national security interests when it's really corporate interests for the multinational corporations based in the United States. I was making a TikTok about how John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles, who used to be corporate attorneys, were basically they got into the two positions, the head of the CIA and the State Department, and they set up a coup in Guatemala so that United Fruit Company could more easily grow and extract bananas there without paying Guatemalan workers more and without paying more taxes on Guatemalan land. It was all about their profit margins. It had nothing to do with US national security interests. It's the same for TikTok. They don't want ad revenue or any sort of, monetary benefit from our use of a social media platform to go to anyone but the corporate motherfuckers that run our country. And when the government is making huge sweeping decisions that support corporations in this way, that's what we're talking about with the descent into fascism. I think a lot of people think when we talk about the descent into fascism, we only mean we think Trump is racist. That's not what leftists mean when they say that. We mean we have lost any meaningful control in our democracy to corporate power. And that's really what's going on here. It's never been about foreign influence or national security interests in a way that means something different than corporate power in America.
How am I supposed to find out now about the evil shit that was done in the name of getting me fresh bananas at my convenience at all?
I
Where do
know.
I go to find that now?
We should do a sub series on like CIA plots. Stephen Kinzer and I, who I was his, teaching assistant when I was a grad student, he wrote a ton of books about what the CIA did abroad and American imperialism. And there's really no place for that to exist beyond books and the National Security Archives, which are not organized in a way that are easily accessible. You have to like know where to look to get the information.
Yeah, just kind of thinking back on, 4 years of swiping through TikTok, I've learned more about evil shit behind bananas, corporate crimes, um, alternative views and narratives of that, that are kept out of mainstream school curriculums. For a minute there, it was really an exchange that was, I think, you know, all social media platforms have echo chambers, but it felt like a huge group of people was on there and they were all exchanging information, whatever somebody knew a lot of stuff about. They became like a little media island into themselves. And you could go on there and you could learn about what they know about. And millions of us were just doing that every single day for 4 years. And I would say, you have your echo chambers on the fringes, but I would say we all kind of took some significant steps forward in our knowledge. And isn't that what, the whole intention of the First Amendment and free press is all about?
Yeah. Before we talk about Red Now, I want to say one more thing about the TikTok ban. It has to do with Ken Klippenstein's reporting. He got a leak from, it's not from the State Department. Okay, wait. Gabby, cut that out because I don't want to give away any sources.
Nice.
Okay. I want to talk about Ken Klippenstein's reporting on the TikTok ban. There is a leaked document that is internal communications from the State Department. And it's from this month, earlier this month on January 6th. They were discussing how they would move forward in the world of the TikTok ban. And they plan to not only stay on TikTok because it is such a popular news site, they also plan on paying digital creators to put out content to promote public diplomacy, aka US interests abroad. So not only are they going to stay on TikTok, they will be posting so people can't hear from us organically what we have to say about life in America unless it is through a curated State Department message. We can't get news from around the world, but our State Department can. This, when I read it, I was like, it's really as bad as it seems.
Yeah, and you know what? If you got any conservatives tuning in, or you got some conservative members of your family, I happen to be of the belief that we're probably all in a slow or maybe not so slow moving political revolution where the allegiances are just changing rapidly and they're going to change as our problems grow beyond our capacity, the capacity of our political system to solve them. And we're going to have some weird allegiances here. But conservatives, the government's allowed on TikTok. You're not allowed on TikTok. You have to anything that's coming to you from the other people in the world who are on TikTok. Our government is saying that information can't reach your eyes and ears. You're not allowed to talk about things on this platform, but we are, and we're going to filter it through to you. It's very paternalistic. Ken Klippenstein is always talking about this in his reporting. But that right there is an opportunity for weird bedfellows. Okay. If you're a conservative and you're like, oh, free speech, well, now's the time to make a stink about it because the government's doing something that they're saying that you're not allowed to do. And we are all kind of paying a price for it.
I want to share a story and we'll decide if we want to keep it in or not. But I
Yeah.
made a video. It's kind of drama, it's a little inside baseball. I made a video about Ken's piece. He sent it to me right after it went public. Obviously, I would be interested in it because it's TikTok. I make a TikTok about it and what it says. I get a message from an influencer that I have seen do work with Joe Biden, Kamala Biden, pictures in the Oval Office, the whole nine. A lot of influencers are like this. I don't want to reveal their name because it's not necessary, but they have a lot of followers and they're kind of a news influencer. They make content about what's happening. Um, they messaged me saying that Ken Klippenstein, who's been a respected investigative journalist for a long time, misunderstood the leak. And actually, it doesn't say what Ken's piece says it says. I replied back, are you saying that this internal communication is falsified? Because everything Ken reported on is in a literal screenshot of the document that he published in the piece. There's no room for misunderstanding. He put out the leaked document. I got a reply saying, I spoke to the leaker and they're wrong. They're saying what Ken put out is wrong. I messaged Ken. I'm like, look at this. This is crazy. Ken says, based on what this person has said, who they're saying the leaker is not the leaker. Because they basically said the leaker came from a place that the leaker did not come from. And this person's lying to your face. So this is someone who's very close with the Biden administration, trying to get me to take a story down that looks bad for the Biden administration through lying. And that's scary because this person is someone a lot of people have gotten their news from on social media. And they even went so far as to say, I get that me telling you this makes it seem like I'm one of the influencers that's going to get paid by the State Department and that
I
I'm a
was just
Fed.
thinking that. Is this what we can expect the people
And
who
I was
are
like,
allowed to stay on TikTok?
haha, that's exactly what it seems. But I mean, come on, man. I work as a correspondent for an investigative journalist outlet. I'm gonna look more into it than just someone said it was fake, so I'm gonna take it down. Like, what do you think this is? It was a crazy situation.
Yeah, yeah, that is crazy, and just makes the case for more accounts doing more speech. I think we were progressing along nicely there, but evidently too nicely to be allowed to continue.
Yeah, that was nuts. Let's talk about Red Note now.
Oh, this is the funniest. I mean,
This
no
is the
doubt.
fun part.
One of the funniest things about this to me is that I think there was an elite assumption here, because they know for many things they got us over the barrel. There's not a lot of choice that we can make if the elites want to go one way. And they said, okay, well, if TikTok goes away, then that means everybody that's using it now is just going to migrate over to our apps. Zuckerberg, Google, everybody else, Musk. And instead of doing that, the millions of users were like, fuck you, Mark Zuckerberg. If you're worried about Chinese spies and data security, we're just going to go over and hand it right over to them via their app with the absolutely perfect translation of a name, the Little Red Book. Of course, we're talking about Red Note. Jessica, what did you think about this when you saw it unfolding?
Yeah, I think it is an intentional choice that instead of calling Xiangshu, which is a direct translation of Little Red Book, in reference to Mao's Little Red Book, I do believe they're calling it Red Note because they don't want the kids to love communism, but the way Red Note is going, they just might because a beautiful cultural exchange started happening. People were genuinely curious about what life is like in China. The US government has made it so that we don't get a lot of good information about life in China. And I think both governments don't want it that way. China's already trying to see if they can limit US users from seeing Chinese content and vice versa. But what happened was people started saying, what's the average salary in China? What are the school hours in China? In the US, is it true that the minimum wage hasn't gone up in 16 years, or is that just our government's propaganda? They thought that very factual things about regular life in the United States was their government lying to them, trying to make America seem like the worst place possible. And of course, it's true. They were like, is it true an ambulance costs thousands of dollars? And we were like, yeah, 9,000, buddy. And they were like, it's about $50 here. A guy did a video on Red Note from Shanghai saying at most, with like all of the bells and whistles being used to save your life, it would be $80. So
Can you imagine paying that
basically,
here?
in like 3 days, Red Note is doing what they feared TikTok would.
Yeah, it's just such a beautiful, to me, just such a beautiful example of divide and conquer falling apart because we can see through this specific example of a bunch of Americans migrating to, truly Chinese app, What's used against us in terms of divide and conquer on all kinds of issues. Here we are. We just went through an election season where I don't know how many times China was mentioned, but
China.
the fact that we can say that and it's a meme, we've been scapegoating China for a long time, right? And the divide and conquer game goes like this. All kinds of problems in your life, whatever it is, it's because of China, or it's because of immigrants, or it's because of, gay people, transgender people, whatever. And then we spend all of our time focusing on that instead of the people who have real power over the things that are making our life tough in America. So you go and you get this picture in your mind. Oh, things might be really bad here in America, but there are starving kids over in China. And then you go onto their app and you see gleaming cities and you see bullet trains, and ordinary Chinese people are taking you on apartment tours and talking about how an ambulance isn't going to put you into medical debt. And then you're getting the reaction coming back from Americans seeing this firsthand just by connecting with ordinary people. And they're like, oh my God, we've been lied to. Where else are we being lied to? And the answer is on a lot of things, on a lot of things. I just got back from covering a story in Springfield, Ohio, checking up on the cats and dogs that are supposedly being eaten there. Spoiler
They're
alert,
eating the cats, they're eating the dogs.
of the pets of the people who live there, Jessica. We checked on all of those pets and they remain unconsumed. Uh, and there it is, another instance where somebody is scapegoated to us to take our eye off of the ball over what's making keeping our wages low, keeping our health care high, bankrupting our Social Security, keeping Medicare out of the hands of people who could really benefit from it. It was just a beautiful, unexpected breaking down of what's usually used to divide us. And I think I'll close on this because, I do want to say to all the people out there, but saying, oh, but China has its problems. The Uyghur Muslims, name whatever you want to do that's a violation perpetrated by their government. The thing here is elites run and control the government in China, elites run and control the government in America, but for a brief window unfolding on the internet right now, it's just ordinary Americans and ordinary Chinese people comparing notes. And it's amazing.
Right. And unlike TikTok United States based in Los Angeles, of course, the parent company is ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. The head of TikTok is Singaporean. In any case, RedNote is actually headquartered in Shanghai and is also owned by a parent company based in Shanghai. So it would be very easy for HR 7521, the TikTok ban bill, to be used to ban RedNote in the US. And I think that's a little bit crazy because what the app has done is allowed people in the United States to social network and connect with people, regular people in China. And this bill allows the president to decide who Americans can connect with around the world and who we can't connect with. It gives the president power to sow and maintain these divisions that we already have with our foreign adversaries, which why is China a foreign adversary? Why do we not have a relationship where we say, how can we make life on Earth as good as possible for the people that live in both of our countries, considering we have very large economies and lots of resources we can share? Why it doesn't work that way? I think it's, the fear of our leaders and their desire to divide and conquer and make as much money as possible and export cheap goods from China and rely on factory labor there that's much cheaper so they can sell it to us. It's all a money-making scheme that keeps us divided and fighting with each other. And I think having this brief moment of understanding on Red Note is wonderful. And it might be like this small glimpse we get into China before an era of really extreme US isolation. And this bill that is about the TikTok ban is really about, ushering in that new era.
Just remember what it felt like when you started comparing notes with ordinary people. Also, isn't it so hilarious? I remember back when I first got Facebook, and then I when did I graduate college? 2012. And the conversations from the tech leaders back then were, oh, they were flowery and they were hopeful, and it was the Obama years, and it's like we are shedding all the bad things of history in the past when we were really just a knuckle dragging underdeveloped society. We're in the digital age where through our companies will foster connection of all people across the world and break down walls and it'll be a glorious moment. And then we start comparing notes about like, wait a minute, you guys are don't have to pay to get life-saving healthcare. And all of a sudden the conversation about these from the owners of these platforms is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We didn't mean it like that. Don't anybody get crazy ideas. We gotta make sure we have legislation to ban this if the lid ever comes off too much.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. And it's dystopian and crazy and sad. And when I first noticed this, I was sitting in the chair at Rising covering a story about the TikTok ban, and I was like, well, let's just pull up the bill. And I read through it and I was like, that's crazy. And then like a couple days ago, we were talking on a team call and I was like kind of remembering this. And I was like, did that end up in the final form of the bill? And I brought it up and I was like, it did, but I haven't seen people talking about this. And I think that's intentional too, that they wanted everyone to think this was just about TikTok and not about the much larger picture of what tech could do and what the ruling class wants to limit tech to be able to do.
Yeah, that's a really important angle there. And I would just plug for the audience. If you haven't already Googled Jessica's piece in Drop Site, you should do that.
And also check out Red Note, if only to see the beautiful landscapes and street views in China. It's
Yeah,
been so interesting to see.
what else have you been finding on there, Jessica?
I've really found a lot of Luigi Mangione content. This is such an interesting wrinkle how popular he is. I'm gonna show a screen grab I have of like a cartoon. Oh, wait, wrong camera. I'm showing it to my
There we go.
laptop camera.
Very nice.
Um, they love him, and someone made a post like, "What's going on? Why is Luigi Mangione so popular?" Because it was way before Americans were there. It's not even like the CCP was like, "So convenient that Luigi Mangione's popular. Push Luigi content to Americans." Luigi was popular in posts that are completely in Mandarin from like mid-December, way before the influx of Americans. So this is not like a plot to influence us to like him more than we already do. He's already popular here, but one person replied in this post that said, why do you guys like Luigi so much? He moves for you suffering people. Put differently, another person said that there's a phrase that whoever collects the firewood must not sit out in the cold.
Uh, uh,
These hit pretty hard for me. I was
I
just
get
like,
it. They gotta ban this shit right now.
I think they're going to. The other thing that's really cute is the cat tax.
Oh,
They
yes.
to be able to join the app and use RedNote, we must pay the cat tax and showing pictures of our cats to
Yes.
the users on RedNote. That's all they ask of us.
Yeah,
Um,
I heard other pets are eligible, perhaps house plants. I have a really sad Monstera plant that I could show off, but I'm gonna get kicked out of China.
I found this meme about the cat tax, and it's quite funny. They're dunking on the IRS. They're like, oh no, people are worried about paying the cat tax. Don't worry, we don't have the IRS here in China. We can't enforce you to pay the cat tax if you don't have a cat.
Oh man.
So it's been funny. They've been cooking the United States.
They've been cooking. They are eating and leaving no crumbs over there as well.
And they're making jokes like, I'm your Chinese spy. Here I am. Literally making a joke of arguments of our legislators on the floor of Congress, which has been awesome to see too.
Really, really wild. I don't know how to button that up other than we are ruled by clowns who want to repress you and take away opportunities to compare notes with other people who have much more in common with you than you do with anybody who owns a social media platform. So I suppose just keep that in mind as an era of repression and whatever that has in store for us comes down the pike. Hold on
And
to those
quickly,
moments.
yeah, exactly. And to our members of Congress that have allowed us this moment on Red Note thanks to banning TikTok, we say to you, Shia Shia, which
Yes.
means Thank you.
Excellently said.